Nearly a year ago, this space was completely covered in 8-foot high weeds. Now, as the season is nearly winding down, I wanted to give you all an update of how the season has been. Welcome to the Faithful Farmstead, where we as a family are passionate about reclaiming our roots and want to help you reclaim yours. Let's start from the beginning. Last winter, we started cutting down the weeds. I mean, they were 8 foot high. It was hard to get in here. We just slowly pushed them over, cut them. We came in here and mowed, and then we got a gigantic tarp and covered everything to kill any remaining weeds, any weed seed that wanted to germinate. We wanted to stop that right away. And then in the spring, we took that off and we tilled this space. And when we tilled it, we were a little bit discouraged. I mean, I had built beautiful soil at our last place and we were excited for a new journey here, but to see rocky soil was a little disheartening. But that didn't discourage us in the way of moving forward. We got some local compost and I figured out where I wanted to have my rows, and I put topsoil and compost down there. And so what I learned this year, as you can see, this space has grown food. Hi. What I have learned is that food wants to grow. And so even though we had poor soil, we did add some amendments with compost. It grew food. Like, it fed us this summer. We ate an insane amount of cucumbers and tomatoes and okra. Now, I will say, although it exceeded our expectations, it definitely didn't do what it should have. I planted more tomatoes than I ever have, and I definitely didn't harvest as much as I have in years past, having less. So it shows me that soil does still need some nutrients to be built up, but we were really happy with what it did this year. One of my absolute favorite new things that I've grown in the garden this year is tromboncino squash. Y'all, I'm completely hooked on this. So I love squash, and every year I plant it, and every year the squash bugs take it out. And so I'm always optimistic, plant squash again. And this year I planted squash again, and all the squash bugs took it out. You know, we got some. But this, okay, it has stayed. It keeps producing. There's squash bugs on this plant, but they have not taken it out. So what's really cool about this plant, and I heard about it first from Sean and Beth Doherty. I heard her speak at a women's festival, and then we've since been going to their talks at the Homestead Festival, and they rave about this squash, and I see why. It's so cool. Not only does it grow like super majestic over a trellis, you can harvest them at different sizes. And so like these little ones that are growing here, I'll let them grow a little bit longer, and then we will use them just like I would zucchini. Chop it up, saute it in a pan, and then I let it grow a little bit bigger if I'm doing like zucchini boats. And I've kind of been testing the limits of how long I can until I harvest them. And so I was going to a potluck, wanted to take sauteed zucchini, and I picked one that like legit was like the half size of me. And it sauteed up so beautifully. It still had some crunch. It had like a sweet buttery flavor. Or you can let them reach like full maturity. And this is kind of then like a butternut squash would be. This is gonna store great in my pantry, and we can eat it, that rooster. We can eat it as butternut squash, or it is a really good feed crop for your animals. So I loved that it was like such a wide range of what you can do with it. So next year, this is the only squash that I will plant, and it's gonna be awesome. I'm thinking like a whole tunnel of like tromboncino squash. So the shelf life on this is really long because the skin hardens up and it acts like, you know, the same way a pumpkin would or a butternut squash. And so you can put it in your pantry. It can last, I think, over a year. And the Dohertys, they really like to use it for their pigs. And so we're gonna get pigs next year probably. And this will be something that we can give to our pigs, you know, throughout the winter or in the spring as an extra supplement, or if we didn't have feed, this would sustain them to some degree, I think. Real quick, this video is sponsored by High C Boots. And y'all, I have been so impressed with these boots. I have tested the limits with them, doing all the things from walking the dog every morning, garden chores, running errands. We literally probably walked 10,000 steps a day when we went to the Homestead Festival, and my feet did not hurt. So I'm completely sold and will forever have a pair of these boots. If you want to check them out, we'll be sure to leave a link below. Thank you, High C Boots.
High C Boots? What's that? Are you turning Miss Daisy or what? I might stay in.
So, if you want to check them out, we'll be sure to leave a link below. Thank you, High C Boots. Your boots are awesome. One of the things I did notice with my tomatoes is tomatoes are really heavy feeders, and they really need like nutrient-rich soil to produce like a lot of fruit. And if you don't have that, then you really need to like be feeding them. And so I definitely didn't feed them as much as I should have. And for the amount of tomatoes that I planted, I did not harvest what the potential could have been. We still harvested a lot of tomatoes. What it showed me was that the soil was good, not great. So we're just gonna keep building soil and get it great. One of the ways that we're gonna continue to build this soil is by adding layers. And so this fall, when our trees drop their leaves, that is nature's fertilizer, okay? And I will chop them up, just run over them with a lawnmower or whatever, and I'll spread a layer onto the garden. This is something I've done every fall, and I've always seen really good results in my garden by adding leaves in the fall, letting them break down. It also creates kind of a mulch to keep all your good guys in your soil. And then in the spring, we will add more compost to where we're planting. And then after I'm done planting, we will cover really heavily with wood chips as a mulch. So that's what you can see on the ground here. And that's held back the weeds. And that this year's wood chips will break down for next year's nutrition. And we'll just keep doing this cycle of building soil, and we won't till. So we tilled in the spring, but we won't till again. So in previous years, I have always put my Determinate tomatoes in tomato cages. And Determinate tomatoes, they only get about 4 feet-ish tall, and they just kind of bush out like a bush. They produce all of their tomatoes usually within like a couple weeks. And because they're smaller, I've always put them in tomato cages. Well, this year we had this cattle panel on the property. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna experiment and see if I can put Determinate tomatoes on trellis. And I won't do that again because the Determinate tomatoes really didn't utilize the trellis great. And because they want to bush out, they're a little bit harder to tie up. So from now on, I will always put my Determinate tomatoes in cages. So there is a good amount of tomatoes in here. Tomatoes would probably be happier if we had a little bit more rain. It's been really, really dry here. And so water from, a hose that's city water is never gonna be as good as like rainwater. But I noticed this is why I pick my tomatoes when they blush, because something decided to have a snack. So whenever my tomatoes blush, I pick them. One of the crops that definitely has not suffered in our hot and humid weather is okra. Okra grows like a weed. If you stood here, you probably could watch it grow. I have been giving gallons of okra away this week. And even yesterday I came out and probably picked a gallon. And then this morning I came out and there is pods literally everywhere. So we like them like this size for fresh eating, and then like this size I would use to saute in a pan. But the okra, they'll keep going. August is okra's like favorite month when it's really hot. And so if you are living in a hot climate, I would really recommend that you plant okra because it'll make you feel like an excellent gardener. It just doesn't need a lot of help. It grows a lot. It produces a lot. So try that. We have had a super busy summer with life and with renovating a house. So the garden has definitely taken a little bit of a back seat this year. But one of the things that can take a back seat is zinnias. And my vision for them totally came to fruition. I wanted them on either side of the gate so that when you walked into the garden or saw the garden from afar, you just saw a sea of flowers. And they have made me so happy this year. Like, they're just so pretty. We've been clipping a ton for the house to give away. It draws an insane amount of pollinators. Like in the morning you come out here and there's just bees and butterflies everywhere, and they're drought tolerant. So we are in a drought right now and they're still just growing like crazy. So if you need a little joy in your life or in your garden, plant zinnias. This garden has far exceeded our expectations this year. It's been a lot of fun and we are so grateful to be here. If you want to see the whole story of this garden and what it was and what it's become, make sure to click this playlist here and go check it out. Subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.